Hello, everyone, and welcome to this video edition of the ACB Advocacy Update. This conversation will be short but sweet. We've got some exciting news to share and an introduction to make here at the American Council of the Blind. Leading this conversation, I am one of your hosts, Clark Rockfall, the Director of Advocacy and Governmental Affairs for the American Council of the Blind.
And I am Swatha Nandakumar, ACB's Advocacy and Outreach Specialist.
And thank you to everyone who is joining us on social media with our video audience, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, YouTube, and wherever else our social media, Swiss Army knife, Kelly Gask, our communications specialist, is sharing this video, as well as those listening on ACB Media, as well as via your favorite podcast player. As always, you can learn more about ACB by visiting our website, acb.org, and relevant for this conversation, as we are talking with ACB's new audio description project coordinator. You can learn more about ACB's audio description project by visiting adp.acb.org. So earlier this year, ACB announced, and we are excited to welcome as the ADP coordinator, Tabitha Kenlon. Tabitha, good morning. Hello.
Good morning, Clark. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
And Tabitha, how are you doing on this slightly cold and dreary, but warmer than usual January day?
I'm okay. I've had a little cold, but I'm dealing with it, and I'm just concentrating on getting settled into ACB and finding my way around the virtual corridors.
And Tabitha, many folks at ACB know you, but there are likely still many that do not. So will you share with us a little bit about how you personally got involved with the American Council of the Blind?
Well, I knew that the ACB existed for a while because my mother is blind and I would hear her talk about it. And in September-ish of 2020, she told me that the ACB was doing these amazing community calls and she thought I might be interested. And of course, since the suggestion came from my mother, I didn't look at it immediately because, you know, what do moms know? But I finally got around to looking at it. And of course, my mother was right. I was interested. So I started attending some of the calls, and I started in October of 2020, my very own reading discussion group. And since then, we have met, I think, just about every week for about 2.5 years. We did miss a couple sessions during convention, and we missed once when I was in Dublin and forgot about the time change. Missed my own group. But we have focused mainly on 18th century literature. So that's been a lot of fun. And then in February of 21, I started a disability studies reading group, and we meet monthly to discuss books that address disability from personal, political, and cultural perspectives. And that has also been really great. So I'm already a fan of ACB before I joined officially.
Tabitha, what was it about the community that took you from, I guess, just learning about it to pretty quickly jumping in and hosting community calls on light topics like 18th century literature?
Yes. Well, who doesn't love a little Jane Austen? Come on. Well, part of it was that I was in withdrawal. My previous job was as a professor of English at a university in Dubai, and I had left that job in 2020, and it turns out that that was not the best time to look for a new job. So I kind of had time on my hands while I was looking for a new job. And I missed teaching. I missed talking to people about interesting intellectual things. And I often read Persuasion by Jane Austen in the autumn because it's just an autumnal book, and it's my favorite by her, and one of my favorite books ever. And I thought, well, maybe I'm not the only one who would enjoy reading this book and talking about it. So I, took the plunge and posted the information about the call, and people showed up. And I was like, great. And they kept coming back. So we just keep talking about every 18th century book that we can find in an accessible format.
All right, last question for me before I let Swatha take over here. Do you and your mom attend the same community events? Or
No.
is she a participant in your led community events?
No, bless her heart. No. She and I are we have different interests, but she is very supportive, and both of my parents are very proud of me. And when the job was announced, my joining ACB officially was announced in the community call schedule, my mom shared that with my dad, and my dad was just like, "You're famous." And I'm like, "Okay, Dad." But I did a virtual book launch, and they both did attend that very quietly. So.
Awesome. So I'm also a fan of literature and books. So I'm glad that I have someone to talk to now about that. And you mentioned like being in Dubai and Dublin as well. So tell us a little bit about your background, personally.
Okay. Well, I'll give you the short version. My most recent job was as an assistant professor of English at a university in Dubai, and I was there for 6 years. And before that, I was doing my PhD at Northeastern University in Boston, so a total of 12 years teaching. And before those things, I was mostly kind of doing marketing, publicity, copywriting for various organizations, including New York City Opera, which sadly no longer exists. But that was, one time that I really got to indulge in my artistic leanings. So that was a lot of fun. I did my first master's in theater at King's College London and the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. So I do have that sort of, artsy background there. But after I left the university in Dubai in 2020 and faced quite a daunting job market, I decided to be a student again, and I got a second master's, and that's what took me to Dublin. I was at University College Dublin, and I did a master's in international relations, and I finished that in August of last year, 22.
Nice. So what was Dublin like and Dubai like? I've never been there, but those are really cool.
They're very different. It was funny because I spent 6 years in Boston, which was the farthest north I had ever lived. And then immediately after that, I moved to Dubai, which is quite warm. And I think the most surprising thing about Dubai was how humid it was, but it is right on the coast. And so particularly during the summer months, you just get a lot of humidity. So that was interesting, but it was an interesting place to live, and it was a great experience. I got to do a lot of travel, and I would have classes where no two students came from the same country, so it was by far the most diverse place that I've ever lived and worked, and that was really great to get all of those different perspectives and experiences, and talk to people about their lives and the similarities and the differences. So that was a lot of fun. And then Dublin was nice, a lot less hot. I had friends who would get all exasperated when it was 75 degrees outside, and I'm like, guys, like, this is winter in Dubai and other places that I've lived. But it was nice. It was a lot more walkable. So I got to, I started using a cane when I lived in Dublin. So I got to practice my cane skills in a pretty walkable city. And the support that I had there was really good. So it was overall a really nice experience.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Just kind of one experience there. Back to you, Clark.
Thanks, Swatha. Tabitha, your thesis when you were working on your master's in Dublin was on the implementation of the Marrakesh Treaty. That is something that ACB members fought long and hard for here in the United States, the ratification of the Marrakesh Treaty to be able to access accessible materials across international borders. Do you mind just sharing pretty quickly on what you learned and what your conclusion was about the implementation of the Marrakesh Treaty?
I love that you gave me a time limit there. That was wise. I could clamber up on that soapbox and dig in. Yeah, so obviously the Marrakesh Treaty is a wonderful, wonderful thing. That it is meant to just hugely expand access to published materials for people who are print disabled for a variety of reasons, visual or otherwise. So the goals are admirable. I think anyone involved with it would tell you there's still work to be done in the implementation. And I think that a lot of and this is something that has come up frequently in my book groups, as we've looked for books to read. And I have members who are in the US and in Canada. So I'm always kind of checking, and the UK. So I'm always kind of checking, multiple national libraries to see if everyone has access to the same material. And we quite often don't. And I think people would like if Marrakesh had just thrown open all the doors of all the libraries, and we just had like one global library where we could borrow whatever we wanted from whatever country we wanted. But that's not the way it is. There are still, channels and agreements, and, you have to make requests and a lot of times and wait and things like that. So the spirit is great, and a lot of people are still working really hard to make it meet its ultimate goal. But there's still some work to be done.
Yes, and from one form of accessible materials to another, going from accessible print publications to accessible media, video media, entertainment, and other forms of content. Here we are now with ACB's audio description project, and you as the ADP coordinator. So what was it that drew you to the position within ACB to apply for and ultimately become the audio description project coordinator?
Well, you halfway answered it there. The idea of expanding accessibility and making more content available to people. One thing that I came across when I was researching my master's I already knew about it, but the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and to me, a very key component of that document is the idea of social inclusion. So obviously education and employment opportunities are crucial, but that social inclusion component, I think, is also really, really vital. So, having access to the same information and entertainment content that everyone has at as equal a level as possible. That was something that I felt I could kind of, understand initially from the book perspective, but also from the film perspective. So I thought, well, maybe I can help. So I applied.
Tabitha, you mentioned from the book perspective, from the film perspective, but you also bring a stage perspective to this role as well. Can you share a little bit about your background in the performing arts?
Yeah, so I love theater and classical music. My dad started taking me and my siblings to classical music performances when I think I was like 7 or something, really little, which was great. It just really built that foundation. And so I did the master's in theater, and I used to make, pre-COVID, I would make an annual pilgrimage to the West End in London and see as much theater as I could. And I was really lucky, actually, when I was there in January of 2020. I think I saw 3 or 4 shows in 3 days. And my eye condition is degenerative, so my ability to see clearly what's going on stage has declined. And I was attending some of these performances with friends who would kind of tell me if something really important happened, such as in I think it was As You Like It, Shakespeare, performed by the Royal Shakespeare Company. They had a visually impaired actor on stage, and so my friend had to tell me. She's like, "Oh wait, I think she's using a cane." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" So I got a little teary. Just knowing that that they were doing that kind of inclusion on stage. So I think having the inclusion for the audience members as well, to get those audio described performances is something that I'm definitely excited about, because I didn't honestly really know that it existed. I knew that movie theater audio description existed, and then through streaming services I knew that you could access it that way, but I didn't really know that theater was part of that. So it is exciting to see that, and hopefully be a part of promoting and advocating and making that a bit more common.
Yeah, that really speaks to and representation matters, and why seeing yourself on stage in a film is so important for anyone, for any minority. So
Yes, and Tabitha, I like how you often phrase it, that the audio description project and this role kind of marries several of those passions, right? The arts, advocacy, and accessibility.
Yes, those
so
are my
that's
3 A's.
There you go. Good things come in threes.
Yeah.
So Swatha, any additional questions for Tabitha?
yeah, definitely. So you mentioned this role and your background and all that. So what are your hopes and dreams for the role? What do you want to accomplish or be part of in this role? What do you want to do? What are your dreams for the position for ACB?
Oh, I want to make everything accessible all the time.
Good company.
Yeah. And join us in join us in Tabitha's second quarter video podcast to see what hopes and dreams she's accomplished by that. 3 months. That's the timeline.
Wow, that's my deadline.
Yep.
Okay. Fortunately, I'm surrounded by a lot of really wonderful people who can help that. It's really amazing what the project has accomplished so far. So right now I'm very much in just still learning what's out there, but I think there are truly even more great things to come.
Yes, I think so. I hope so. And I think on behalf of all of ACB, certainly the ACB staff, we are very excited for you to join our team, for you to help us chart this path forward, this path of growth and expansion for the audio description project.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
And Tabitha, if there are members of the audio description project that would like to connect with you, we know that they can visit the adp.acb.org website for the audio description project. But what's the best way for folks to contact you over email?
My email address is tkenlon@acb.org. And I should say thank you to everyone who has already reached out and welcomed me. It's been really nice to start my first day with welcomes and congratulations from friends and strangers alike. It's been it's been really lovely.
Great. And thank you everyone for tuning in for this quick episode of the ACB Advocacy Update. We look forward to the year ahead for the audio description project and the rest of the programs for the American Council of the Blind. And we will close out. We can make it specific to audio description, but it's all of the advocacy work we do. So Swatha.
Keep advocating.